the ladder. Sulam mutzav arza virosho magia hashamaima. It's probably, after Akedas Yitzchak, the most iconic image in the entire Sefer Bereshis, which is a book of powerful images. Nothing is more iconic. Nothing is more transformative. Nothing is more universal. How many ideas does this symbol conjure? Rooted on the ground, stretching to the heavens. How many cultures have spun myths and ideas around Jacob's ladder? Hine sulam mutzav arza virosho magia hashamaima. So Yaakov has this epiphany, and he's frightened, and he's scared, and he's lonely. When you compare his davening to Yitzchak's davening, or even to Avram's davening, because remember, Avram's davening takes place after Sdom. We think that Avram davens to save Sdom, and of course we know he davens for Sdom, he negotiates for Sdom, Hashofet kol haaretz liyaseh mishpat, but at least the Torah's record of Avram's davening is the day after Sdom. So effectively he has little dramatic to daven for because Sdom has already been demolished and decimated. And Yitzchak had very little drama in his life to daven for. Remember, his davening takes place well before whatever skirmishes he has with Avimelech. But Yaakov has a lot to daven for. He's penniless. He's been evicted from the family. There's no record of Yitzchak ever verifying Yaakov or acknowledging you made the right choice. For all we know, Yaakov still carries those doubts and those recriminations and whatever resentment because Yitzchak never acknowledged him and validated him. And he's being stalked by, as Chazal tell us, by Esav's son Eliphaz. So he's frightened. He's a lot to daven for in that lonely mountain. And then Hashem appears to him in a dream. V'hin Hashem nisav alav vayomar, and Hashem gives him the assurances that he'll return. So the question is, how do you respond to that moment? How do you respond to that epiphany? How do you respond to that great opportunity to receive assurances and guarantees from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How do you respond? So the truth is he responds in two ways. First of all, he gets up in the middle of the whole event. Vayikatz Yaakov mishnaso vayomer achein yesh Hashem hamakom hazeh v'anochi lo yadati man ara hamakom hazeh ein zeh ki beis elokim v'zer shar hashamayim. So his first response is natural. Man ara, ma is a rhetorical question. He's not asking anyone how meaningful or how transcendent and lofty is it. He's just commenting, Man ara hamakom hazeh ein zeh ki beis elokim v'anochi lo yadati. Then he goes back to sleep. Remember, this is the middle of the night, so he has a dream. He gets unsettled. He gets disquieted. His sleep is disturbed. He wakes up. He has that first response. And then when he wakes up, Vayashkem Yaakov baboker, when he actually wakes in the morning, then the response is a little bit strange. He takes a stone and he creates a monument. Vayikach even asher samer asher sav, vayasam asam matzeva, vayikash temen al rasha. That's all appropriate. He renames the place, also appropriate, certainly Sefer Bereshis, major events happen. It used to be Luz, now it's Beit El. And then there is a pasuk where he gets very legal. Vayidar Yaakov neder lemor. He takes an oath. Im yeh Elokim imadi ushmarani b'derech hazeh asher anochi holech. If Hashem escorts me and protects me and preserves me and returns me, v'nasan li lechem le'achol uveged lubosh, and provides food and clothing. If that's what happens, v'shavti b'shalom b'eisavi, and I return in safety, Vayashem li lelukim, v'evan azar sheser shamti matzivay beis elukim. This will become a shrine, a religious site. And here's the strange part: V'chol asher titen li aseres renulach. I take a neder to give Hashem a 10% cut of everything that I make. Where does this come from? Is that the way you would respond to Gilui Shechina? Is that the way Avram responds to Vayer Lev Hashem Eloheinu Mamre or to the Akedah? It's very, very deflating. It's not what we would expect. We would expect Yaakov to respond, as he does, with the Matzeva, with the Beis Elokim, with thanking Hashem, with speaking to Hashem. It's a weird response to make a neder, tit for tat. you protect me, you follow through on your promises. It's a neder. Can you imagine if you promise, I don't know, your child, you do something, and the child says, well, you know what, Dad, Abba, if you do it, I'll take an oath, I'll give you a cut. It's just, that's the way you treat a business partner. It's the way you treat a business adversary. It's the way you treat someone you love, care about, and trust. It's only not a Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Baruch Shalom. What is Yaakov doing? Why the neder after the clarity of the nevuah, or in this case of the Ruach HaKodesh? So let's zoom out a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about yeshiva, and I live in that world of 18, 19-year-old yeshiva boys. I'm happy to talk about that. But hopefully that discussion about yeshiva life will serve as a springboard to a broader conversation. People have asked all the time, have asked me, have asked other people, what analogy can you provide for yeshiva? What should yeshiva be like? What should it serve as? It's an interesting question. I heard great people use the following image, and I think there's some merit to it, but there are two parts of the image that I find very disturbing, and therefore I don't see it that way. Some people have referred to it through the prism of Parshas Noach. The yeshiva is a teva. The world around us is chaotic, the world around us is confusing. The yeshiva is a retreat, a place to retreat to save yourself from the flood that's engulfing everything outside of the yeshiva. Why do I not like this image? For two reasons. Primarily because it creates polarity, and it creates exclusionary, and it creates dismissiveness to the insiders and the outsiders. Let's face it, everyone outside of the teva, they're not just neutral, they're not just in the other yeshiva down the block, or they're not just doing good things. They're dying. They're wicked. They're roim v'chatoyim. They're malei chamas. And it's this us versus them mentality, that we are the saved people, and we are the right people. I remember growing up in yeshiva, the yeshiva system that I went to, there was a phrase that I only realized how offensive it was to me afterwards, but people would be called the oisvarfs, the people who were thrown out. They were, in Yiddish, ois, away, thrown, varf, they were thrown out. These were the people who just didn't belong. And even today when I hear some people, and I don't mean this, it's just my own personal response, when people refer to those who aren't religious even, not just those who aren't in yeshiva, as fry. So I know people don't mean it in an offensive way, but I think the word has a pejorative phrase, and it's an us versus them, and it's an unzera versus a not unzera. And that's not my vision of Am Yisrael. And my vision of Am Yisrael is one large family with a common past and a common destiny and a common mission. And unfortunately, at this point in history, for whatever reason, part of our family is not classically observing halacha in the way that we would like and we try to aspire to, but they bring many other values and of Jewish expression, Jewish identity. So this whole sense that you're in the yeshiva and you're the superior and you are the ones and you are saved and the mabul around you is drowning other people, but you're safe and sound in the teva, to me it rubs me the wrong way. And the second part is, and this is not just ideologically but developmentally, there's no carryover from the teva. You leave the teva, you're on your own. Nothing about the teva carries over and influences a post teva. And in fact, Noach gets drunk after the teva and basically washes away any teva experience through his wine and his inebriation. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that image of the yeshiva being a teva. What I like to view a yeshiva as, and we'll get beyond yeshiva in a moment, is what I call I'm not the first person to call that, but I call the yeshiva a lighthouse. What do I mean? Imagine that you were sitting in a lighthouse during the weeks before the sea journey. And the captains and his officers are sitting around the quiet table with a fire burning and food and warmth and calm and serenity. And they're planning their navigation across the ocean in the quiet, calm solitude and clarity of the lighthouse. And then they set out to sea. And they face a blinding storm, a hurricane at sea. Sheets of rain pound the deck, and the stern dips beneath the water. And the ship is about to capsize. And it's dark. It's the first of the month. There's no moon. and all the staff of the ship is thrown into bedlam, fearing for their lives as the ship tips to and fro. At that point, the captain has the following decision to make. He takes out his blueprint and his navigational plans that were established or formulated in the quiet, serene moments of the lighthouse, in the clarity of the lighthouse, and he should follow them, even though he has no clue whether turning the rudder 3 clicks north or 3 clicks south or whatever, whether it will lead him to dry land or not. It's too confusing, it's too dark, it's too chaotic. He has to learn how to trust his former self above his current self, because the former self saw things more clearly than the current self. And if he trusts his former self from the lighthouse, he will steer the ship and the entire crew to the safety of dry land. And if he can't trust his former self above his prior self, probably they will face shipwreck. It's not easy. It's not easy to live in the past, and it's even more difficult to trust the past self over the current self. But that's how we grow in life. Because sometimes we're flung into moments of confusion and stress and perplexity and frustration, and we don't see things clearly, and we have to return to a former moment in which we achieved clarity of purpose, clarity of vision, clarity of ideals, clarity of... To me, that's what a yeshiva is. A yeshiva is a lighthouse. You prepare, you walk away from the culture. You don't deny it, you don't villainize it, you don't demonize it, you just walk away from it. That you get quiet, clarity, lucidity, vision, hopefully courage and strength. And then when you leave yeshiva, you have to make decisions about how you want to conduct your life. And you have to stick to your guns and to your convictions and uphold those decisions even when they're hard and they don't seem that attractive in the heat of the moment because you're too confused. I remember on a personal basis, there were 2 decisions I took that, in retrospect, because I didn't articulate this at that age, were lighthouse decisions, because I'd reached those decisions when I was in yeshiva and things were clear to me, and I stuck to those decisions even though life became more complex and confusing and complicated. But I didn't veer from those decisions. I came to yeshiva after high school. I spent 2 years, and then I went back to Yeshiva University. And I still felt like I wanted to spend more time in yeshiva, more time with Rav Lichtenstein. So after I left my 2 years after high school, I said, I'm coming back after college. Fast forward, actually, I finished college in 2 years, but that's a different conversation. Doesn't say much about my acumen. It says more about the situation in college in the 80s. But 2 years later, there's nothing compelling me to come back. My friends were all moving ahead socially. My friends were all moving ahead professionally, educationally. None of my friends returned. A lot of them said they would return after yeshiva. It's a derech olam. You get caught up in the affairs of this world. And there I was, butterflies in my stomach, wobbling knees, and have to get on a plane and spend another 2 years because I told myself in 1983 that I wanted more time in yeshiva. It was a hard decision to make and to take. One of the best decisions of my life, clearly. It was a lighthouse decision. I trusted my former self more than that current self, who was in the throes of college and social life and whatever else affects human decision-making. And then fast forward another 6 years, now it's 1993, and 1987 when I'm returning for my second year, and I wanted to make Aliyah, and here I was. This was the crossroad. This was the moment. I'd started to work in America, as my wife did. We had 2 little children, and we knew that the way that our professional lives were evolving and the trajectory of our professional lives, if we don't make Aliyah now in 1993, it's going to be 2033, after we retire, Bezrat Hashem, and for us the decision was to make Aliyah, and it was really hard. This is pre-Nefesh B'Nefesh, pre-internet, so I couldn't check on the internet what the rules of customs and duties. It was very, very hard with 2 children, both of our parents. But I trusted my former self, the previous self of the 80s, and says, I want to live in Israel. And I have to make decisions based on the clarity that I had then, not based on... It's a different way to live life. It's realizing that there are moments in life that are moments of clarity. And at those moments, you have to capitalize and make hard, courageous, strong, resolute decisions that you don't back down from, even when they no longer seem so compelling. And there's no way to calibrate when you should or shouldn't back down, because sometimes you have to pivot, and sometimes life does throw curveballs at you. Life does change, and you can't stick to the lighthouse, and you can't be stubborn and wooden-headed. Say, this is what I decided. How many people do we know spend their lives quixotically, as in Don Quixote, chasing castles they'll never reach because they got it in their head that's how they're going to live their life? And life's a lot of pivoting. Life's a lot of changing, moving as the game around you, as the goalposts around you move. You have to move as well. You have to move in sync. So it's impossible to tell you, not to tell anyone, when you should stick to your guns because you're deciding based on the lighthouse effect, and that's where you're deciding the lighthouse and the clarity of the lighthouse, and when you should exhibit flexibility and be nimble enough and fluid enough and sensitive enough to changes. But there have to be lighthouse moments. There are definitely lighthouse moments in your experience. And this is Yaakov's lighthouse moment. Because right now he is alone. No wives, no children, no sheep, no swindling fathers-in-law, nothing. Him, his conscience, and the ladder atop of which Hashem is standing. Nitzav alav. There's a lot of clarity. A lot of clarity you get in a quiet, dark mountain where you're facing an existential crisis. You see things you don't see in the day-to-day. And of course, Hashem shows him things he couldn't see on his own. So Yaakov doesn't rely on his passion and his belief and his joy and his love and his commitment. And he knows all of that is going to change. He now is dreaming about angels. Fast forward a little bit, 20 years later, he's got 11 children, 4 wives, a father-in-law who's biting at his heels on every turn. And what does he dream about in the end of Vayetze? Look at his dreams. He's dreaming. And he's dreaming about spotted sheep and dotted sheep and polka dotted sheep. He's dreaming about sheep. Because that's his world. His world now is finance and sheep and shepherding and herding season and cowboys and to a degree, he's not ready to return to Eretz Yisrael, because then he tries to, and love ensnares him. So then a malach comes to him in a dream. In the middle of his sheep dream, a malach appears. And he doesn't say, Yaakov, go back. He says, Anochi ha'el beis el. I am a messenger of Hashem, who you encountered in Beit El. Asher mashachtat sham matzeva. You established a matzeva. Asher nadarta li sham neder. Ata kum tzei min ha'aretz hazos v'shulas. And that's Yaakov's lighthouse reminder. There was a time when things were just simpler, clearer, more obvious. Yaakov was wise enough 20 years earlier to turn the ladder into a lighthouse, and to turn the ladder into a commitment, and to turn the Ruach HaKodesh and the dream and the Nevuah into a neder. And the Malach now is calling in that neder, saying, remember, it's not just that you're obligated to your neder. It's not just that. It's the mind space that's associated with the neder. Remember, you saw things more clearly. You weren't dreaming about sheep then. You were dreaming about malachim. You were dreaming about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You were dreaming about ladders. You were dreaming about shamayim. Now you're dreaming about polka dots and spots and brown and blue and black. And go back to yourself. Go back to your prior self. That's what yeshiva is. It's a lighthouse. It's a place to stand beyond serenity and tranquility, wisdom, foresight and vision, and think, and translate thought into commitment. And it's a commitment to our convictions and to our principles, that discriminates between real long-lasting achievement and unfortunately, vanishing religious commitment. Because if we trust ourselves at every given moment to make the right decision, we'll come up short. So I said I'd speak about yeshiva, but it's true. Like, when was your last Lighthouse moment? Was it on Yom Kippur? Was it at a wedding of your child? Was it at your own wedding? There are moments in life that the clouds part. On your trip to Israel, if you don't live in Israel, over the past year, and certain truths and certain realities become clearer to you than they are in the day-to-day. And then they don't. And then they fade, and then they become obscured and oblique and difficult. And are you able to say, this is a moment? I'm in a lighthouse. I'm standing on top of the ocean. I'm looking out at the ocean. I'm looking at maps of the ocean. I'm mapping. I'm not being tossed on waves. The waves of society, the waves of life, the waves of experience. Can you generate lighthouse moments? Can you find those moments and clutch them and grasp them, clasp them tightly and say, okay, this is a moment. What should I decide about my life based on what I'm seeing now? And how can my future self depend upon the current self, or at that point, my former self, more than the current self? It's not easy, but it's a mental shift. Once you take the mental shift, then you make bold decisions. Then you could take big swings. Then you could do the difficult ones. The butterflies in your stomach wobbling needs decisions, because the previous person is calling you to those decisions. It's the Yaakov of the beginning of Vayetze that calls the Yaakov in the middle of Vayetze back to Beitel. He's too embedded in the sheep to even tell it to himself, so the Malach has to jog his memory and to wake him up and to say, remember, Beitel, the neder, oh, Beitel, the neder, that's when I was clear. And he returns, of course, by the end of the Parsha, Vayifko bo malachei Elohim. The Parsha is bookended with angels in the beginning, angels in the end. In the middle, it's basically sheep. One angel who serves as Yaakov's alarm clock, reminding him, go back to your prior self. Shabbat Shalom.